Thank you very much for joining us today and for joining us yesterday. It's a lot of information, but the great thing is that you have access to all the materials for the training on the Planet Gold Criteria Guide. And then also today we'll be taught, well, not me, but Camila Munoz and Cristian Arias will be speaking about the market access and supply chain. And it'll be more of a information session. So you'll be seeing the presentations that you could also use as you train miners, but those in the mining community, I should say. But we wanted to make sure that you have all that background information as well. The Cami will be speaking in Spanish. So if you need to hear it in English, please choose the English channel. And if you need to hear it in French, please choose the French channel. Like yesterday, if you have questions, or please use the chat. They may ask you to engage. Please feel free to unmute yourselves and engage with them as well to make it more interactive. Okay, Cami, if you want to do an introduction of yourself and your role, and then I'm going to go ahead and go off camera. Thank you very much. And if you are speaking, please make sure to speak. Sorry, if you are speaking, please make sure to speak clearly and slowly for the interpreters. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing very well. It's a pleasure to have you yet again. Yesterday was a very active and engaging day regarding this training that was presented. My name is Maria Camila Munoz. I work at ARM, the Alliance for Responsible Mining, and I'm a specialist in import and exports management. We have developed some training material for all of you to offer you any and all necessary tools so that you can reach mining organizations and help them in the implementation of their projects using all the tools for compliance with Planet Gold criteria, and so that you can have effective practices in the development of capacities and projects within the mining community. We've developed some training materials with tools based on presentations, based on a training guide for all of you. You will see step by step how you will be able to implement each of these presentations. It is a guide that will allow you to have a solid base in learning objectives and how we're going to approach and engage with mining organizations, how we're going to capture their attention, and finally, how to make it so that we have progressive compliance with Planet Gold criteria, considering a concept of Planet Gold criteria, what the purpose of these criteria is, what their rationale is, and also start approaching legitimacy affairs issues regarding human rights, environmental protection, and mercury elimination. Those are the basis for the compliance with Planet Gold criteria. So once we've had all that is made clear, at the end, we hope that we can reach the final link in the chain, and that is to access the responsible markets. So once we've complied with all of these Planet Gold criteria, we will be able to connect and engage with a market that values each of these efforts. Today, we're going to have that training sessions. We're going to see everything that we've achieved so far regarding compliance with Planet Gold criteria and discuss how we'll access the market, how we're going to reach mining organizations, engage with them so that they can have a sustainable, responsible process that meets the market expectations. And so this will be the presentations. You know, you have full access to these presentations and you will be able to modify and adapt according to the needs of your individual needs, and you'll be able to direct these training sessions in an autonomous way. Today, we will have a direct hands-on training. You'll see the material, and we will also provide you with the training resources so that you have all the necessary elements to start implementing these training sessions in your own environments. So if you could just remind me what countries we have online today so that we can increase engagement. Yes, just write it on the chat, please. Right, Nicaragua, Ivory Coast. All right. All right. We have many countries. Equatorial Guinea. Okay. Wonderful. What other countries do we have there? I want to see you very active on the chat today, okay? Guinea. United States, wonderful. Global companies, global components, sorry. All right, great. Let's see. You're all quite active. Wonderful. Uganda, wonderful. As we were saying, we're going to start off with this training. And so, what is market access and how are we going to manage that? I'd like to hear from you. So what are your perceptions regarding market access at each of your countries? What do you believe are the greatest hurdles, the greatest obstacles? What have you seen? Have you seen that the interactions with the market are complex? Are they easy? Or is it something that flows in your countries more effectively and then more seamlessly? So what are the barriers that you found regarding the market? If anybody would like to participate, it's important for us to hold a discussion and that we can learn from the experiences of other countries. I would love to hear from you. I don't know if maybe from Nicaragua, from Equatorial Guinea maybe, or the United States. The fact that we have a lot of informality is a challenge in Nicaragua. All right, great. That's one of the obstacles that we see for many mining organizations. It's very highly informal. I don't know if maybe you have other ideas. Or maybe you would like to share with those who don't know the realities of other countries. What are the challenges in market access? Ibrahima in Guinea, how are your market access issues? Do you have any particular barriers in Guinea? Or what is your reality on the ground? What's the reality regarding trading? The distance from mining communities in the capital makes it very hard to work without middlemen. Great point. We're going to talk about that now. We're going to discuss how we're going to minimize those risks and how we're going to access a more fair market and not need so many middlemen. I would like to hear from the African nations. What are those barriers that you find on the market? I don't know if maybe from Equatorial Guinea. All right. I don't know, maybe Christian or someone, or can somebody help me with the French translation? I'm
I
trying
see
to
it too.
understand a little bit. See it too. Can you help us? Well, help us with that. I don't think you're gonna have it needs to do with traceability. I don't know if maybe that you have to be on your own site, the lack of professionalism, no access to banks, no access to finance. All right, yes, I think that's one of the barriers one of the obstacles that you'll find in many Latin American countries as well. You'll see that it will apply to our countries as well. Also, analytical laboratories. Yes, no laboratories to examine the purity of the minerals of the ore that has been sold. Very true. Thank you for your participation. It is extremely important for us to understand those dynamics and to see that this doesn't happen just in certain countries. We see that this is something that happens more common, that is more complex all the time. Please let us know. Oh, exactly. That's exactly right. Thank you very much for the translation. Well, we will also see that the fact that there's the distance is long and access to markets is also a problem. Somebody had raised their hand. Banks do not control, do not manage, do not account for risks. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, low level, very small, low degree of professionalism, difficult relationships with the banks. All right, great. That's wonderful. So, we'll continue with this very active communication so that we can all build that up. And also, and if someone has experiences where this market access has affected you personally, please do not hesitate to share it with us, because all of that helps us create strategies to minimize those risks and address those barriers. It's very important. Oh, sorry, Chris, your hand is up. Yes, great. I just wanted to make sure that everybody can have their audio, because at the start we couldn't do it. So this is probably, yes, and they're not speaking. I think the host would have to allow access for the persons for them to activate their audio.
Yep. Thanks, Chris. I did that. I'm not sure. Oh, great. Okay. Thanks, Chris.
All right, then let's continue. I was saying that to analyze the market, it is important for us to analyze each of the links of that supply chain so that everything is in line with Planet Gold criteria. We'll reach at this point, and we have found a point of progress for Planet Gold criteria. We have an ability to show that we are legitimate, that we are considering human rights, and that we are complying with environmental criteria, and that we're protecting the environment. We have zero use of mercury. We are also respecting the rights of indigenous communities. And we have one final link, allowing access to the market and allows us an opportunity. And so that we can ensure access to a responsible market and validating each of the efforts. And so this market model access is designed so that we can understand the market and help mining organizations give us. Here we're going to discuss international commerce of gold. We're going to improve market access with responsible practices we will be discussing. And finally, a very practical exercise with a practical connection exercise. That's a practical exercise will be.
Cami, un momento, porfa. Podemos escuchar a Bernardo. Sí. Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear
Okay.
you. Yes, Rodrigo.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so I hadn't seen in the comments here the lack of accessibility to mining sites, and let's see, and all the challenges that we've seen in Madagascar. Great. Okay, so let's continue now. During that first presentation in the international gold market, the content of these presentations will have an introduction, the gold trading international, and the global gold demand per industry, international gold price, supply chains, and of course, then we will see a conclusion. So what are the learning objectives for this first presentation? To understand the dynamics of the international gold market, because of many reasons, it's important that we provide a wide view and understand how the international market is behaving. Many mining organizations, even if they cannot export and they can only sell locally, it's important to identify how the international market behaves to better understand how from my access to local markets, I can have further efficiency and be able to point to the buyers and that can send us to the Planet Gold criteria all aligned. We're going to see what are those key trends in the gold trading and see what those challenges are that miners face and that are very relevant. Let's see, somebody said something here, I think. I thought I heard somebody. Okay, and that are going to be able to explore. So in the world, we have buyers that are very much interested for those responsible practices. And when they're aligned in the compliance of the Planet Gold criteria, they're betting for mining organizations. They're accompanied in those Planet Gold criteria processes and make them be able to access these markets. Those are the main targets. And so this is what we're seeking. So this session will, as I said, will tell us basically what is the wide view of the international gold market, and where we're going to see exactly how to relate ourselves and what do we have to take this in time. So we have to see that my mineral and it's aligned with Planet Gold criteria, and that the price is in agreement with what we're seeing and what are those opportunities and challenges that we require to provide so that we can identify strategies that can be coherent with those sustainable practices in time. So then, this is the link to go on to the presentation. And so this is the presentation here, excuse me, of the international gold market and gold trading. Remember that you have access to this link and you can see all the training material from yesterday and today so that you can go over the details and you have the capability of adapting them also and using them according to the strategies that you have in each one of your countries. So the content of this presentation, as I mentioned, is to be able to understand the international gold dynamics and what are the traditional supply chains and what are the strategies that we should point to and what are those key strategies to go into international gold markets. As I mentioned, we're going to identify dynamics and analyze barriers and challenges. And please recall that you can interrupt me at any time. You can ask, or if you have any other experiences you'd like to share with all of us, that would be very valuable. You can write it in your chat, or you can just raise your digital hand and I'll give you the floor because I like to listen to you also, and so we can all learn from each other. Okay, so the international gold market, and in this case, we're using a business model, which is the gold trading. It's a responsible gold that's aligned with the Planet Gold criteria, and that is important to have a progressive compliance road that can lead us to the best results and to address a market that is betting for legitimate mining organizations that love and respect nature and that have actions for improvement in compliance with environmental protection that do not use mercury and that are betting for improving the livelihoods of the communities and respecting their rights. So when they comply with everything that we saw yesterday in our material, it's important that communication with the miners be truly direct and that access to market is a further motivation for them so that they may comply with these criteria and be responsible and sustainable and access the market. So the idea is to be able to prepare them and so they may understand that the global gold market is influenced by a series of economic, political, social, and other factors that can affect that gold supply and the demand, obviously. So these factors are the ones that will influence in the price, in the manner and how we're going to select potential buyers even, and to be aligned with the sustainable and responsible practices and to understand how all those elements impact the market and that mining organizations can get ahead of those changes and trends and make strategic decisions to maximize their success opportunities within the market, especially when they are the leaders in the implementation of responsible practices and also leaders in the implementation of the compliance of the Planet Gold criteria. So it's important that we may perform a prior research when we're going to be addressing mining organizations and to research who are those best producers in the world. I think Christian raised his hand. Yes, hello. Yes, Kami. Let's see, we're in the presentation number 8 slide of the PowerPoint that you used originally. Are you okay there? No, no, no. Thank you for that heads up. Here it is, actually. Okay, now we got it. Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, just put it in presentation mode. Okay, yes. So I was telling you again about the importance about having and being very clear with the communication with mining agencies, companies, so that by being leaders in the implementation of responsible practices can impact access to markets. So this is very important here to see the research on that access to markets and who are those producers throughout the world. In previous years, during the closing of official data, when we did some research to see what are the best producers and also the ones that are responsible, and maybe those who are not so much, to make a market research that can help us to make decisions. Who is my competition and how they're doing it, and hence the importance of knowing in other countries how they're implementing it and how they're performing this to take all the good and the responsible parts and adapt them to each one of the mining operations. So we found the largest producer, China, Russia, Australia, and the US. So China is one of the greatest gold producers in the world with a production that has been very consistent throughout the years. It's always been positioned as the best gold producer in the world. It has mines throughout its territory. Now let's follow with Australia. Somebody's speaking, I believe. They have their microphones open. Does anybody want to say something? Okay, it was a mistake. Somebody left their microphone on. Okay. All right. So Australia occupies the second position in gold production. It's one that has like the Super Pit gold mine, for example, and the Burlington mine in Western Australia. Thirdly, we have Russia, which is a gold producer with large deposits in Siberia and in the east side of Russia. And the United States is a very important gold producer with mines in Alaska, Nevada, and other states. Nevada is, as a matter of fact, one of the places in the U.S. that is especially known for its high gold production. And I don't know who is with us today from the U.S. here knows of any other mines or is aware that U.S. is a great gold producer and how it's positioned in the international gold markets. Okay, so it's very important that this information is updated year after year and that we can have a wide look to be able to share with these mining agencies and to them ascertain how we see the world at the moment. Now then, what is that world gold demand for the mining companies? It's very important. I think Chris over here wants to say that. Do you have an idea? I think that the ASGM market has in the or area has it here. So we can see that ASGM has an important role. Over here, they're talking about 20% worldwide. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so now for the mining agencies, it's also important to know who are those responsible buyers or who are the ones that are buying gold and how they can arrive at those buyers and to communicate everything they're doing. All of that good practice implementations and what are those challenges that they're finding. Sometimes we can see some mining entities that say no, that the market is rather sluggish and it's only being taken to a certain part of the world or they're just going to Switzerland, for example, so they don't have a full knowledge of what that gold road is in around the world, and it's important to ascertain this, and that can help us as motivation to continue with the implementation of responsible practices. So China and India is one of the greatest buyers and world consumers of gold. For the majority, the gold is highly valued in the Chinese culture, especially for festivities, ceremonies, and for them, they consider gold akin to prosperity. So for jewelry, they use it also as investments. Later on, we're going to see exactly how there are other industries that can also jump on board and that are directing towards responsible markets in response to the compliance with Planet Gold and other international standards. So the gold is a popular investment in China. The Chinese investor buy gold to protect themselves against economic uncertainty and inflation. And so they acquire gold to pull back on it because they know that gold is a very good investment. Okay, so Chris is sharing ASGM in various countries and how gold is seen there. Yes, thank you for that, Chris. So then we can find all of that participation of the ASGM in this whole scheme. So we can see that China and India are a couple of the main buyers because of the culture, because of their investment capacity, and because they're pointing with gold as one of the best fixed assets that are most stable for their culture and of course their investment. Switzerland. Switzerland is one of the greatest buyers of gold in the world because in Switzerland we find the greatest refineries in the world. In Switzerland, we see the greatest percentage of gold coming in through the world. They go to their refineries and then go and export them to the various parts in the world. Switzerland is a gold refining center in the world, and they process a lot of the gold in the world. They convert them in the best and highest purity gold, recognized and accepted in the international market. The United States and Canada is also one of the greatest buyers in the world. They're one of the main buyers, and that also supplied Latin America, South America, and they supply gold to the different ends. For example, investments or technological applications. There are many organizations as well that also manufacture electronics that use gold and that they would like to have responsible gold so that within the social responsibility declarations, they may indicate that's what they use and that they may sustain that, or even though they don't use gold for jewelry or for another ingot industries, they're using them for the manufacture of their electronic products and as responsible gold. So, as I mentioned, within the global gold demand, we can find, and I will find here in the chat, let me see here. Okay. All right. Chris, shows us in your countries, what are the best places where you can export gold? Or what are the sites that are best recognized by those gold mining companies? What are those places that you have mapped out or that you know as being the best gold buyers in the world? Chris, maybe you can translate this. Yeah, it's important to put all those comments in French as well, if you like. We have translations in the three languages, so you can go ahead. All right, well, thank you very much for that. So I would like to hear from you to see who are those buyer who's been that you've identified within your own countries. These are the main buyers. These are the ones that buy the most in our countries, or whether you want to tell us about the highest producing sectors in your countries, you can do so as well. I would like to hear you. So what are the main buyers that you have mapped out? Okay, somebody from Nicaragua, they told us the US, Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and what have you identified in your own countries? I would like to hear from you. The US because it's close to Nicaragua. Okay. I would like to hear from Guinea, Ivory Coast, Celine. Maybe you'd like to share your experience, perhaps. What have you identified, or do you consider it's important to work this a little bit more and to know more about this particular fact? Or Waline,
Yes.
Michelle Zhao.
So I wanted to talk about Uganda. Yes. So in Uganda, there is a regulation that does not allow export of unprocessed minerals. So we are currently running in Uganda about 7 gold refineries of different sizes. Also in recent times, from the beginning of this year, 2024, the Central Bank of Uganda wants to buy, is putting all the documentation in place so that they can buy gold from the artisanal and small scale sector. Yeah, so that is the current situation. So even when gold leaves Uganda, it's supposed to leave in a processed state. So in a refined state, it cannot be, unprocessed gold cannot be given an export permit. Yeah, so you can imagine it creates some interesting situations within the country or within the gold supply chain. Yeah, I just wanted to raise that.
That sounds wonderful. Very much interesting that you follow these dynamics and that you can seek out opportunities and to see what opportunities we can have by having that processing done within the countries. And so once they've processed, we can see what other relations we can form and export to refineries or just arrive with our own refined product. And with the relations with the central bank, we can see other possibilities. So thank you very much for that comment, Lynn. Konkovo, I don't know Konkovo and Abubakar, please. Burkina Faso, Switzerland, especially for gold, artisanal gold, and Dubai. And for Guinea, they go to China and surrounding countries, Dubai and also Australia. Okay, then, so we can see how Australia, by being a producer, they can arrive there and take gold from Guinea. And that presently there are countries such as Dubai that are using that responsible gold and acquiring gold that can support those mining organizations throughout various parts of the world. We can see that Switzerland, Dubai, and Australia do so. Thank you for your participation. Okay, then, let's continue. So within that global demand, we saw the countries that are buying the mineral. We've seen the countries that are betting for accessing ASGM gold. And we're also seeing that besides the countries, we have industries that are accessing this. So Lynn was telling us that the central banks are important gold buyers because they use them to be able to, for support their monetary reserves. So as I said, gold is considered a fixed asset that is very safe, the most secure and stable one, really, which makes it very to access them through various industries. So the central banks want them for the monetary reserves. So investments, of course, is a fixed asset again that is very stable. So therefore, it's used for various investments and to maintain stability in your investment. I don't know if in the United States, perhaps the issue of investments of ATFs and other currencies, China, Dubai, and more Ivory Coast. Okay, somebody from the US, have you seen within their sector the issue of investments of gold as a fixed asset? Is the question. Okay, well, they're telling us here. Go ahead. Yes, what they're saying is that, as a matter of fact, what's been said about the case of Guinea, it's mostly in China, Dubai, and Australia. Yeah, and that they can't sell them without processing it. So once it's been processed, then they're okay. Then we're then going to go on to another market, the central bank or other markets that require them being refined. So then we can see that they have an advantage and sell them directly to the jewelers or technological industry. So it could be national or international. So the export process that we're going to address in a minute will take this on. So there are many industries that are betting on technology, which is in constant growth, despite the fact that it is the lowest percentage around the local data. But nevertheless, it's important to identify the technology sector that is constantly growing and see where we could point those to and see what are those organizations that with their small acquisition of gold are betting for that responsible gold nevertheless. And the highest gold consuming market is of course jewelry worldwide. Okay, so over here we can analyze market opportunities in the various industries and in the various sectors to be able to bet on responsible gold and access more responsible markets, jewelry, technology to sell the gold ingots or to sell it to the central bank. So we can find here a series of tonnages that is purchased by each sector. So we can see among the four sectors, we have opportunities, and especially when we have the opportunity of communicating all those actions in fulfillment of the Planet Gold criteria. So we can see then that everything that was shown by Chris yesterday, how to create improvement plans, how if we find or rather follow due diligence from the assessment and mitigation, and of course, communicate what I'm doing. These are relevant stakeholders that are interested in knowing what those key actions are that are being performed and that will follow the mining organizations and communities, and especially those that are doing things correctly. So what are those factors that affect the international gold price? So one, we can see some golding organizations that say that the gold is too high. We're going to sell gold is going down or it's not profitable for our operations. So we start hearing within the surroundings, all of these mining organizations, and then many a time understand what those factors are and why the gold prices are very high. And at other times, they are seeing other factors that are affecting supply and demand. So while there are more persons interested, buyers, they're going to have the capacity for the gold to be at the highest levels because there are interested buyers. And since we have a demand for buyers that are interested in acquiring this gold, so the supply is going to decrease. And of course, gold prices will rise. So we have that inverse relationship. So if we see that there's little demand and there is too much of a supply, then that will be in detriment of the price. The more buyers there are and little supply, then the price will go up. And that's how those supply and demand dynamics will function. While the central bank will acquire more gold for their reserves, they will have less gold for the gold marketing for other areas, and the prices will go up because there's not going to be enough gold because the central bank for each one of the countries are acquiring all of that gold for their own reserves. So all of the economic environment and other global crises will affect the price of gold because they will generate uncertainty in their marketing processes. So it is very important to be able to achieve being aware of those global crises and that geopolitical and economic scenarios to understand what the expectations are for the predominant countries economically in the world. So if they are involved within these global crises, there will be further geopolitical uncertainty. Hence, the price of gold will be higher because within all of these processes, then they will acquire further gold at the moment of uncertainty. And the price of dollar, that's another thing with the price of gold is inversely proportional. The higher the dollar, the gold will prices will drop. And when the gold goes up, the dollar goes down. So it's an inverse relationship. So that's why many gold companies follow the behavior of the dollar. Any questions? Okay, let's see in the chat. I think we're fine. I see some, raise your hands if you have any questions or would like to comment. Make sure that everybody's following us. Oh, we're doing okay, says Anna. Merci from Abu Bukar. Tells us that political stability is very important in the process flow of gold purchasing and impinges on the fact that the capital flee the banks sometimes. Yes, exactly. As a matter of fact, when there is political instability, the greatest investors within the countries, they go abroad and they make their investments abroad because there is a uncertainty in each one of the countries. So we can see that this is a global issue, global crisis, and when there political instability, then that will affect the opportunities to market the gold and investment. So thank you, Abubakar. Thank you for your comment. Very valuable. So it is very important that we teach the mining organizations to read their surroundings to make efficient decisions that may favor them all the time so they may continue being aligned with responsible practices. So when we talk about the International Gold Prize, there is an actor, stakeholder that is very important, which is the BML, which is directly related to London, which is the entity in charge of setting precious metal gold prices, the LBMA. As if you go to their webpage, you can see the price of gold, and you're going to find them. And they close their markets in the morning and in the afternoon. So managing gold and silver fixings. Victor Andres Garzon, please open up your microphone so we can hear. Yes, it's not always the price and the dollar, as was mentioned. Okay, well, there are many other variables, certainly in issues of supply and demand and availability of global crises, economic environments, political instability. These are all factors, generally speaking, that can affect the price of gold. So, Victor, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how this affects your local currency and whether other uh, stakeholders and variables do you think it affects? Okay, hello, can everybody hear me? Yes, yes, we can hear you fine. Go ahead. Yes, so thank you very much. As you mentioned, as a matter of fact, these are some of the factors that impinge the price of or the dollar and the local economies in the countries that have a long history of gold processing. It's very important and it impinges on the price of the dollar, certainly. Regarding stability in the various countries, there are announcements made by authorities that motivate or demotivate investments, so that makes capital stay or flee. And this is supply and demand, basically. When there's too many dollars, the price goes down, but it's always liaised to what's happening to the gold. This is important to see the prices internationally. Yes, absolutely. Very well, Victor. Thank you very much for that insight and your participation. These are some of the variables that can affect, as we said, and also within monetary public policies. We have to start identifying these ups and downs. It's very important to teach the mining organizations about this as well, because many times during the times of need or the barriers that they find, they do not know about these. And this is directed so that they follow the Planet Gold criteria and they're responsible and they're ready to communicate and access market. They can do so in a better way with these variables. So yes, thank you. Chris, please. Yes, they're saying that the true problem is price fixing. The greatest focus should be in prices that is done internationally. Okay. Thank you very much for Chris and Diana for your comment. It's very important so that we can align ourselves with international prices and to have these capacity building exercises. Another comment. Luis, can you help me with the translation? Oh, okay. Oh, Chris, go ahead. Yes, I was saying that demands of international markets, there's a cost for local producers. And many times what happens is that the refineries do not consider these demands or that cost. Yes, that's right. Very important, Luis. Thank you very much for that very valuable comment. And it's true. You're spot on. And that's where we have to see the strategy so that local producers, that it's a little bit more difficult to negotiate and that we're going to delve now into that. So when we're facing these buyers, we can present to them all of those difficulties and barriers so that the final price that is negotiated can compensate for all those barriers that the local producers have to overcome regarding internal costs or regulations, legislation they have to adhere to, and barriers to be able to export or sell locally. So they can communicate all of these variables to the buyer because many times they don't know those realities, and hence our role there, just as we demonstrate these Planet Gold criteria with training to also be able to communicate all those barriers. The Kava's comment, please. It tells us that what we're addressing is important on the gold operations in the various countries. We have to understand gold trading. And many times it depends on the realities of the various countries. That's right, yes. So we have to condition everything and adapt it and put it into context and use those tools so that generally speaking, within their projects, establish strategies that can perform an efficient and productive accompaniment with the mining company. So that's why I'd like to hear you and see the realities of each one of your countries, and so that we can understand the dynamics that we find in your countries that are participating today in this training, and that you can share with us to better identify opportunities and strategies for our mining entities that are already at a high compliance levels with the Planet Gold criteria. So as I mentioned, this is LBMA regulates and supervises the gold training market and other metals, of course, and silver as well, but of course, vanadium, platinum, but gold is what we're after here. So these standards are going to ensure that the precious metal complies with all international quality requirements so that it's apt for global markets. So we can see that we follow the due diligence where they estimate that all mining companies and refiners are following the LBMA and they are in high compliance of international standards. And with the Planet Gold criteria compliance, and they're very much aligned to these. So the LBMA maintains a list of refineries that are accredited and comply with all those quality standards. These are responsible refineries to produce gold ingots and to do refining, and that they're guaranteeing the purity. So the LBMA is a important stakeholder, indispensable at the moment of setting the market. It's a stakeholder we have to always keep in mind to show the mining companies what they have to follow. They will now tell us about the marketing of gold and guaranteeing the integrity of gold, and they will find the establishment of gold fixing of these precious metals, as I mentioned. Okay, so now I've heard a comment, or maybe I have read it, that said that it's important barriers within the supply chain, and there are a lot of intermediaries that form part within this chain. So since there are a lot of barriers for exports or for access to financing, there are certain variables that fall within the intermediaries in those chains. And this makes the miner not receive a fair price or not have traceability of that gold. I want to hear from you who represent those barriers within your countries, which are many intermediaries within this supply chain. It happens to all of us. Let me hear from you now, or read from you. Who have found those barriers that there's a lot of intermediaries? So what other types of barriers do you find at the moment of marketing your gold? Maybe those at the beginning didn't participate and would like to maybe jump on board now within this supply chain, those buyers. Who is it? Concovo would like to tell us. Mauro Carrera says, I can't open up the microphone, but I have a comment. Maybe somebody can help me with Mauro's audio. Ana Lacayo can't jump on board either. Open her microphone. Okay, so good morning, says Mauro. Okay, he's on. Yes, regarding the intermediary issue in Nicaragua, since we're very much far removed from the capital city, and the volume of gold that is being produced, it's rather small amount, doesn't have a lot of high amounts that allow them to fly to the capital to market them. Since the production is very dispersed, there are a lot of intermediaries that buy the gold as an amalgam with mercury even, and they estimate a recovery. They take the amalgam to contaminate it. We know that they just obtained the melted gold, and so the trust is lost because they don't know the real content of gold. Certain buyers have the XRF guns to determine purity of gold, but that's relative. If the buyer goes to the small mining site, but there is a seller, he is the one that sets the conditions many times. So unfortunately, the lack of a more transparent and fair market makes them, out of need, have to sell their production to any buyer that goes to their area. That's my participation. Thank you. Okay, super. Anna, maybe you'd like to add on something, Ana Lacayo, and then Gustavo? Yes, thank you, Cami. I think that my colleague Mauro addressed it quite well. It explains the role of the intermediary, and this connected with what I said, especially with the informality problem. Because in many cases, it's not only the ASTM is informal, but all the buyers, the intermediaries, are also informal people, and hence doubtful conditions that make their negotiations rather tense. And this is multiplied culturally, even trying to convince and to change the manner that they're marketing their gold. And it's an arduous task to demonstrate why it will be fair, that are better conditions that they can trust. All the technical area goes into play there that Mauro mentioned about the laboratories, and to be able to provide the security that they are providing us a fair trade. In Nicaragua, I don't know, but in other countries, and I'm sorry, the translators, I think I was speaking too fast, but I think over here we have what is called the rustic processing plants that are the rastas. The rastas, as we call it, operate, or that's where they use mercury. But the miners that do not have their own plants lease these rustic plants, and they manage them and they sell them the product, as Mauro said, already extracted or mixed together with mercury, tainted with mercury, and then they have problems with traceability that in Nicaragua I think is a very relevant issue for local buyers as well as for international markets. Not being able to certify because we add the issue of immigration, and there are many other factors affecting the traceability. It's a very complex issue. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, great, Anna. Okay, so Christian raised his hand. Yes, Cami, thank you for that. I wanted to use a question that is being made here in the chat, Mr. Concobo. And you have a lot of experience in that, Cami. It tells us what is the minimum amount of gold recommended to be able to access the international market. Does this fall under the LBMA gold price standard? So we know, Cami, that from each country there are logistical problems, but I'll let you answer that question. Yes. Okay. So thank you very much for bringing that to the forefront, Chris. Okay. So the conditions in every country, there's no limit really to be able to access these. It all depends on the conditions of each country and to be able to see within the capacities that they have in their production and also in terms of cost, what will be allowed. So there are buyers that go through the LBMA and that they can be requested 2 or 3 kilos, which is small for them. There are mining organizations that have the capacity of being able to have production costs and logistical costs within the marketing cycle that will allow them to know whether we have sufficient capacity. There are buyers that can buy a small amount, but that really the export and logistical prices are not going to compensate. There are organizations that can tell us that the minimum to be able to export are minimum 5 kilos, but there are other mining organizations that have a active cash flow that can tell you that they can export 1 kilo or two. These are mining organizations that have done that. So the best way of being able to decide whether I'm able to have an export is to assess your productive cost, logistical cost, your export costs. Because totally what has to do with the sale, we're going to see this in a minute, to arrive at my break-even point that I can cover all of my production costs and I will be able to attain a profit. So there is no minimum of a sale to get to the LBMA, but we're going to see what those costs are and how I'm going to arrive at my point of equilibrium and be able to cover my operational costs and perform a sale that can leave me a profit. Mining companies sometimes don't have that capacity, and because of the desire of wanting to access international market without evaluating their production costs cannot arrive at their expected profits. They have to be very careful with that, but there are no minimums at any rate to access those markets. The minimums are basically supported and they will be guaranteed by the conditions set forth by each one of the mining entities and the countries. I hope I've responded to the question. In a bit, we're going to see widely how we can make an assessment of these costs and to see if we can access them. The termination of the gold price internationally, the price that they are talking about is 100% of the LBMA in the negotiation processes, and you can arrive at the 95, 97% in the negotiation process, and it has to be supported with that production cost to determine whether it's feasible to make that sale. I hope I've answered your question with Anita to see how the sale process comes along. I hope I answered your question again. It's clear? Okay. No minimum amounts. Okay. Conco said something. Yeah, what is the minimum quantity of gold recommended? to arrive at the LBMA. So it's the same thing. Okay, so Konkobo, tell us, go ahead. You raise your hand. No, I'm happy with what you just answered with that. Thank you. Yes, the
Alors, merci
question
beaucoup parce que
was
je suis vraiment
answered
satisfaite de la
correctly.
réponse.
Thank you.
Merci
No,
beaucoup.
thank you all for your questions and highlighting online mode of participation. We have to understand within this supply chain those barriers that we find. So we have to have traceability as well and follow a process within the relations with local buyers and to see with the miners and arrive at the buyers and not to lose the traceability and to guarantee that we arrive at the final consumers and can arrive at the conditions that we had pretended from the beginning. So there are many intermediaries, and we have to be quite careful with these local buyers. We understand within the realities of the miners the desire to accumulate, and maybe they don't have the necessary amount and must have a certain amount to be able to arrive at the market. We have to be careful with that and make them aware that even though they're small quantities, the production that they have, they may take to the final seller at a fair price because sometimes commercial actions may compensate for others. And so what we're looking for all the times in that within the Planet Gold project from each one of the countries is what we are after. Supply chains and direct stakeholders so that we can have as little as many intermediaries as possible. So they have to be responsible and they have complied with the international standards and have the capacity for preparing them and make them aware that the lesser the intermediaries, the better. So they can access directly to the market, arrive at refineries or technological or other industries or jewelry. And like in Uganda, if they haven't been able to export unless they've gone through refining, then of course they can arrive directly to those industries. So these are going to be quicker delivery times with fair prices for the mining organizations. There won't have as many intermediaries. There's going to be further traceability and there's going to be reduction in cost. So we show the mining companies and tell them these are the real costs for this or that. And it's going to be much more economic to do it directly than through your intermediary. They're going to be aware and they're not going to access the practices where they're going to need and to buy amalgamated gold or that is, we don't know where it comes from. And they're going to know that at the moment of seeing the reputation or operational, it's not going to be up to par and they're not going to be given fair prices. So this first phase, we have wanted to implement responsible practices that help us to mitigate prices. So the most important thing within the building of these supply chains is to mitigate risk and to create traceable standards international environmentally so that they can improve their image and that they can build trust with their suppliers and potential buyers that they may implement responsible practices and that they can study the markets, understand it, and be operationally more efficient and be able to increase their productivity by reducing costs, by increasing their benefits, their profits, and that they may know that as there are Planet Gold criteria that people follow, it will certainly help all these mining operations. Any questions thus far? How are we doing? Any questions? Okay, so we're fine. All right. Let's see the chat here. Okay, I would like to have some raise hands to see that we're all connected. Okay, raising your hands. Okay, give me a thumbs up. Okay, so this first training that was developed is the first step to better understand the international gold market. So we've made our path to the Planet Gold criteria. We've known the market. We've taken a wide look on behavior by buyers and barriers and the participation. We could understand in Guinea what the realities are in Nicaragua and the Ivory Coast, and we can see that there are realities that are not too foreign to what many mining organizations undergo throughout the world. So it's very important that we can give you these trainings to mining organizations so they may understand fully. So for this training, we recommend that you can have a map so that you begin identifying the countries, the distances. You may recognize which ones are closer or further away. It's important whenever you direct this training, you can have didactic material to show all of these global opportunities. So among the recommendations that we provide to you to give you this training, it's important, first of all, that the content be adapted and made according to your reality, each one of the countries participating here today. And we have focused on the importance, and we've seen that sometimes it's not just a matter of arriving at the market, but we have to follow a clinical criteria process and see what those opportunities are that we can obtain by being responsible, and that there is a international market to support these organizations, and they have to be in constant research of what are those best gold producers that year after year are produced. And this helps us as a market research for the economic level, as the level of opportunities, at the level of initiatives or standards that can provide an outlook of what are those countries that are spearheading this effort in the gold marketing for ESPM. It's important for them to constantly research what are those stakeholders and their behavior in gold consumption, and to use a lot of graphs, percentages, analyze the data with the miners to identify the opportunities and be able to understand the concept for each one of the presentations that this access to market will have, to be able to discuss together with the realities of the miners each one of the topics that they must address. So, as I mentioned before, this presentation is focused in market research, in an assessment of opportunities, and an evaluation of economic factors, the international gold price, to make decisions that are much more efficient and productive. I can see a comment here. Chris, can you help me with that? Yes, maybe I can help you with the translation. So that Mr. Concoa tells us, if we were to make a comparison between the craft criteria and Planet Gold around the access to international markets for ASTM miners, what can we say? In other words, that effective connection that we've been able to generate between or among these miners that have been supported through the first phase of Planet Gold with the international markets. Okay, let's say that within the Planet Gold criteria and the craft criteria, we begin with a protective level that we're going to address this from legitimacy, as was explained to us yesterday by Chris. So, how many of those miners that are starting within the Planet Gold process, we have to begin with a awareness creation process and capacity building so they may be ready at the moment of marketing. Artisanal miners present barriers in terms of the costs and formality, in terms of human rights, and we can see that the specific sector for artisanal miners present important barriers. The first thing is that obviously the artisanal miners don't have the same capacities as the small or artisanal miners. They don't have the same conditions and they have to do so from a more complex manner given the context in every country. So it's essential that that capacity building and awareness creation follow market strategies throughout the time, but by doing things correctly and then being leaders in those practices. It's awareness creation constantly and capacity building so that they may access from the local markets all of the international buyers and that have the capacity of buying small amounts produced by small miners. Mona, did you want to build up on that?
Yes, thank you, Kami, for explaining that. And I also, I wanted to, just so that there's a more, hopefully, clarification. In yesterday's session, you know, in the workshop yesterday that ARM held, it was really about how to go about explaining the Planet Gold criteria, teaching the criteria, and how it was built off of the craft code, and how to teach that to the miners. So it should be, if it's not clear, we have a lot of resources on the home base, and then also within all of this material that we've shared, that the Planet Gold criteria was built off of the craft code, because the craft code meets most of the standards, specifically the OECD standards that are required to have access to international markets. So if you read the Planet Gold criteria guidance document that's on the Planet Gold website, it's also on the home base. You should have access to this at all times. It does explain to you how we created the criteria, the Planet Gold criteria. Again, we did a lot of research on the standards that are already out there, and the craft code had everything that we needed as a foundation. And then on top of that, the Planet Gold project operations are required then to also meet the other 3 criteria that are specific to the Planet Gold program. So you do have to meet craft code, and then you do also have to meet the Planet Gold criteria 3. So that's why the criteria itself is like a branch of the craft code. So I hope that's clear for everybody here. And we can, again, everyone should have access to the home base. We did a training on the Planet Gold criteria last December, so hopefully it's clear. But of course, we can have more conversations about that offline. But I wanted to make sure that it's not separate, that it is one. We are requiring both, basically.
Okay, Anna. I saw that Anna had her hand raised. Yes, thank you very much, Kami. Yes, I just wanted to build upon or follow that doubt between craft and Planet Gold criteria. Here in Nicaragua, we're still underway in taking off with this project in the selection of the, well, site selection for the pilot project. But we have had many different meetings with some of the stakeholders. One of our largest mining companies in Nicaragua, as a matter of fact, it's a foreign company that is very prestigious. We've already established here with another mining company, which is the second largest one in another area of the country, something that is called the Bonanza model. That is a collaboration between a mining uh, company and ASGM. So 70% of this industry right now is basically from ASGM. So they put a plant for the artisanal miners for processing their mineral free of mercury, of course, and sell it to the same industry. So this is a very interesting model, I would say, in Latin America. And the other company then, since they're working in another area where Planet Gold will be working in, they want to do something similar. But one of the main problems is traceability. And they always ask me, as a matter of fact, I have another meeting after this one, but they always ask me, how far do we certify? We follow the Planet Gold certificate, mm, the criteria and the code, of course. It's follow up a passport, a code to follow into this market. But as Planet Gold, we're not going to be there forever. So what I propose to them is, but this is just an idea. Nothing is for sure. But my hope is to explain to them that as Planet Gold, we're going to prepare these miners, these co-ops, to comply with the Planet Gold criteria. In other words, with all the craft code, which we're already working on so that they may access a certification as a certified miner or a similar type of certification. So to conduct a collaboration with the industry so they may finance the co-ops working with Planet Gold because it's not the same thing. I had a meeting with some colleagues and it's not the same thing starting with from zero with a co-op has nothing, no craft modules or Planet Gold criteria, then to begin with a co-op that has advanced on these topics. So the time is less, the cost is less, and it gives the assurance to the industry or the market that the gold is responsible gold. So to make a collaboration so that they may cover that cost and Planet Gold support in the preparation. So just as an idea that I hope it works. It's nothing for sure, but I think it has potential, not only in Nicaragua, but maybe elsewhere where we can share the weight of these certifications that I think are very important, but at the same time, high cost and effort for artisanal miners. Thank you. Wonderful, Anna. Wow. Very valuable. And I think this is one of the objectives of collaboration, the creation of capacities, and to be able to extract the greatest benefit in that accompaniment. And it's great that you provide that support, strategic support that transcend accessing markets and also supporting people in mining organizations that want to do things right. So thank you for that, Anna. Let's take a 5-minute break right now. Right, it's 9 a.m. here in Colombia. So let's come back at 5 minutes. Okay, Christian. Oh, I have a small comment on what Anna has just mentioned. I think that we can also address this in another space, understanding this from ARM. We know the Bonanza model, and perhaps we can also provide recommendations in this model and coexist. I think that would be valuable. Just that. Okay, great. All right, thank you, Christian. Okay, I answered you through a message. Thank you. All right, we'll see you in 5. So that would be in 7 minutes after the hour, whichever hour zone you're at. Thank you. All right, we're back. Please, everybody, send me a thumbs up or a like so I know that you're back. More hands, please, or thumbs up to know that everybody's back. Great. Okay, then let's come back then so we can continue. All right. So we've seen that the first training was for gold marketing. The second training is a presentation on gold marketing and how to improve access to market with responsible practices. Let's go over here. So this contains an introduction, formalization document, search for potential buyers, what we have to know to, well, know your customer and due diligence, approach and negotiation with the potential buyers. What do you have to know in creating logistical chains and, of course, export? So what do we look for? Just taking an overview of relevant aspects to consider when exploring commercial engagement with new supply chains. What do we have to analyze to better assess market opportunities through tools and a key training that can make the organizations more efficient, and how to develop skills to identify suitable buyers for their gold products, learn strategies to mitigate risk related to money laundering and terrorism financing, and understand how to calculate selling costs to ensure satisfactory profit margins. So I'm going to go on to my presentation now. And I would like to remind you that you have the guide, so where you will be able to see the development of these training courses as from yesterday and today, in the link that Mona gave us to our emails and the chats, and you can have access to all of that material and the guides so that you can by yourselves implement these training efforts in each one of your countries. Okay. So then we can see that in the mining sector, the search for sustainability in the mining sector has acquired unprecedented importance at the moment of doing sales process of responsible minerals that are committed with the compliance of social standards and that want to minimize all possible risks that the mining sector has and be able to support them with responsible practices in compliance with clinical criteria. I'm talking about all those transparent demands that follow sustainable practices. So once we've explored the international market and once we are leaders in the implementation of good practices and that we've identified barriers and opportunities, we're going to create capacities and to strengthen these capacities in mining organizations so that they may follow a marketing process that is efficient. Okay, do you consider that the mining organizations in your country have knowledge of the sales processes, or are they still do this very empirically? I would like to hear from you in the chat. How do you consider that the mining organizations follow the sales process empirically, or they want to know how the processes evolve and such, please let me know. Do you believe that it's barrier, the sense that you don't have access to good information? I want to know how you follow this process in your countries. Is everybody back? You consider that we require further preparation for these sales processes? Lynn Konkovo, in your experience, do you consider it important that we can strengthen the capacities in the miners in commercial issues? Can somebody help me with that French translation, please?
Each
It says that each stakeholders tries to develop their sales circuit through international and national research. And that this diagram represents the process quite well. Okay. It also says that it's important to reinforce the capacities of the stakeholders because they don't have very good information or access to information rather. Yes, thank you very much for that input. So one of the barriers that they have is little access to the information. So in their processes, they have to strengthen capacities to better understand how they can have more efficient sales processes and that are aligned, and that everything falls within the supply chain. And we have stakeholders that are aligned with that responsibility, with that legitimacy, and that they're looking to be able to buy responsible gold and leading these practices. So the commercialization cycle has a series of steps that it's important to follow in a very interesting process, and these processes are made more efficient. So once we formalize all the mining organizations and to have documented facts of all of the information for sale, it's important to provide them tools within each one of the countries and what are those necessary documents to market locally and internationally. Once the mining organizations are ready in in compliance with the regulations and the documents. Oh, wait a second. We have another comment over here. It says that besides the international standards, the OECD guide for due diligence and the craft code are not reflected within their national law. So that is a barrier for their socialization internationally and appropriation by the various stakeholders. Okay, yeah, sure. It's important that we can always expand this communication, and that even though through their regulations and internal laws, they have to fulfill these criteria, and they will help us specifically for the quest of those potential clients that we're after, and that they can respond formally. So within that process, we're looking for legitimacy that even though those planet goal criteria are not instituted within those legislations in your countries, they may see the compliance of many factors that the planet goal follow and that transcend so that we may find those potential clients and access those markets that are supporting these responsible practices. So if there are barriers at the moment of communication and access to information, and that many countries and governments may know of these practices, but that are trends that are sustainable, that are marking the markets internationally in many industries. So we have to continue communicating this, and that in the access to market, it is very important in the necessary trends that we have today to be able to comply with these requirements that is being asked by the market, sustainability and responsibility as trend for consumption today. So let's continue with that quest of potential clients through market research, where it's important to teach the mining organizations to be able to have in smart management of their production and sales costs and prepare the sales. We're going to show you how to know your client, how it's important to do our due diligence for clients and to approach them so that they may have the necessary tools for the logistical chain and have a local and national sale. Okay. So if you have any questions, please just stop me, but I'm going to try to go a little faster now because of time constraints. If you have any questions, write them in the chat. It's important that the formalization be based on those legal documents that each one of the countries verify, those required documents for exploration and exploitation and marketing permits in each one of your countries, and to ascertain each one of the legal documents required. Help them to seek potential clients and to have questions for them that they may recognize the market and who those buyers are that are betting for responsible gold. And what is the size of that potential market, who buy more or less, and we have to identify these and to be aware of who are, oh no, what are those needs and how much each one of these buyers are paying, and be able to see other industries that are betting for each one of this responsible goals. So it's important to keep all of these variables in mind to see if we can access the international markets, of whether I have to establish market strategies locally to be able to sell my gold. So that was the question today with the LBMA. There is no minimum, but the mines have to understand what the production costs are and the analysis of their laboratory, how much that costs, the personnel overhead, basically. And what are those logistical expenses in security, compliance, administration, all those variables that have to be considered and to determine their final profit, and to determine that all of these costs may arise, and then I can sell it and obtain a decent profit. So it's very important to keep this in mind at the moment of doing this assessment commercially, and to say whether I can sell internationally or I prefer for the moment to arrive at the local market and to prepare myself to sell it abroad in the future. It's also important the issue of knowing our client, identifying what are the partners, their corporation, legal representatives, and monitor relations commercially to determine that there are no risks locally as well as internationally, and guarantee that the traceability of that gold will be guaranteed by responsible clients. And to keep in mind what Christoph was telling us yesterday was due diligence in identifying and performing an assessment and risk mitigation, and implement it and communicate all of those impacts that can lead us to communicate each customer about what we're doing and to communicate with them, and that the price that can be negotiated be aligned with the compliance with of all these criteria. So during the negotiation process, we want to talk about potential clients, determine sales price. So this presentation is based on that in being able to determine what are those prices and arrive at a key and efficient negotiation environment, and that these export documents, we can support them so they can have access to them and have knowledge of how these processes evolve and determine the price. You have access to these types of information, and you can do your research of that sales process that you can find it in the guide and elsewhere. I want to share this because of time constraints again toward the end so that we can have some questions and comments. What happened to this? I can't get it to work. Please give me a second. There we go. Can you see my screen now? Okay. Yeah. Sorry, technical problems. Okay. All right. So you could understand during this market access presentation. What is happening here? Can you see the screen?
Sí, está bien,
Yeah.
Cami.
Yeah, Cami, it's fine. Okay. So in this presentation, you're going to see the relevant aspects of the negotiation process in the guide. You're going to find all the material. Okay.
Go ahead.
Somebody had their microphone on. Okay. So these are the main objectives. And once you've understood that marketing route, there is a very practical exercise and approach for the mining organizations, which is the gold route, social cartography for those ASGM miners. So this exercise is very practical because it'll allow you to see very clearly that approach in communication with the miners. It'll help you to facilitate and identify the supply chain they're participating in so that they may identify their territory and be able to understand the challenges and barriers that they find in their mining process. So this activity is also within the guide, and this is the presentation where they present step by step so that according to support with mining organizations through questions that can help them orient the exercise and have an innovation of the process, they be able to, through these images, build the supply chain and follow that gold route from abstraction to sales. So in this exercise, you can go in as you knew nothing of the topic, and you'll have a blank sheet of paper with them so that you can communicate with them when you have a first approach with artisanal miners or small miners, that they can have an identification of how they perceive their territory along with the risks that befall them. So this exercise will allow them to have direct communication with them. It's an exercise that lasts for about 60 to 75 minutes. It'll be an exercise supported by images, and it'll help you to perform these first approaches. They will perform this presentation and follow this guide with you. So through these orienting questions, they can take all of the didactic material so that they can communicate to you where the mine is located, what's around it, what is the means for transportation. So this exercise for the gold route will help you identify all of the stages in the supply chain, the local processing plant, what are the transportation models to the plant, who are the local buyers and the stages, and etc. So this activity will be useful for you in your approach to the mining organization so that you can follow an identification process of each one of these stages. So you'll also have access to these tools. Do you have any question or comment so far? Yes, Cami. Let's see over here. Konkobo is asking us very interesting question related to this about whether there is a list of refiners or refineries internationally that apply Planet Gold criteria that artisanal gold miners can have access to or through. If you like, I can maybe mention some aspects on that question, and then I will let you build up on this. On what was presented by Camila, there is interest within this LBMA organization presented by Camila at the beginning. They have listed these refineries very clearly, and as a matter of fact, as part of their risk assessment policies of these refiners that form part of the LBMA, they have the craft code. So as a possible response to your question, Concobos, could be that precisely the refiners that form part of the LBMA recognize, or at least one of their due diligence assessment tools for ASGM is the craft code. So it's very much anchored as well to Planet Gold criteria, as Mona explained at the beginning. And so I think this is a very good input. Thank you very much. Was that clear, Kunko? Okay. Okay, and I wanted a little space in closing. These are the three tools that we have at hand. Access to market. Maybe we have another 5 minutes very quickly. If you have any 5 minutes, you have any questions or comments on the training for today, we can expand. And to listen to you during this final stage. Any questions, suggestions, comments? Okay. Anna, yes, thank you very much. It's very early here. I just wanted to thank the team for yesterday and today's session. We can see the effort and Planet Gold again for us, phase 2 is very useful to have this. So I'd like to thank the global team, Mona, Marilyn, and you, for the ARM team, and for your information. So maybe in the future, when we're already implemented, we can meet together and talk some shop. Thank you. Cami, I wanted to ask you a question, favor rather, says Christian, if maybe we can show again the content to do that memory exercise as Chris did yesterday, especially with the content that has to do with market access. I think it might be valuable for everybody to know where they are in that sense. Sure. Okay, so again, in the drive, we've already shared it in the chat. Maybe somebody can help me to share this again. You'll be able to find all of the training material, English, Spanish, and French in this link. You'll be able to find, let me see if I can open it. Here we go. Be able to find the two modules, the market access module that was directed today and the Planet Gold criteria. So we're going to find the files with each one of the presentations, and you have the capacity again to be able to perform them according to the needs of each one of your countries. And you're going to be able to find this guide. This guide will give you all of the orientation, how to implement all this material with recommendations. So, for example, in this international gold market, you're going to find estimates, materials, space, and other tips and recommendations to be able to do the implementation of each one of the presentations by yourselves so that you can adapt them to your reality and direct them to your realities. Okay, so you will find each one of the presentations in here, the guide, and this documentation, and you'll be able to find the modules 1 to 4 of the craft code and the additional criteria that builds up to each one of the Planet Gold criteria. So you're going to find the criteria, the requisites, and examples of verifiable documents in the standardized form so that you can have a basis of how to document that compliance and its alignment with the Planet Gold report and the craft code aligned through this verifiable document that is related in this page with this question. And so that we can make it more easier and more efficient to access this, you're going to be able to find this Excel tool and the guide as well, and this document as well as each one of the presentations. Chris, go ahead. Regarding Excel, I just wanted to remind you as well that that column that you showed us in verifiable examples are just examples. In other words, that in each one of the countries, there are certain documents that you might be able to build upon or fine tune. These are just examples of what we've done, but you can certainly contribute and build upon this. Okay, that's the idea, so that you can feed it. I think it'd be very interesting that we have this online and that while you're working on these verifiables, you can feed them as to create a database that can serve for all countries and that can serve as well to make it dynamic, and we can use it in other projects. I think that could be very interesting to think about this. Yes, thank you for that, Chris. Does anybody have any question or doubt to close our session? Well, then I'd like to thank you for your attendance. If you have any other questions, then we can have another minute or so. Remember, we have access to the information, and thank you for your very active participation and for your participation during these 2 days. And any question you have, please don't doubt in contacting us, and we'll give you all the materials in the guide. So Mona, if you'd like to maybe say something else, or Chris as well, and we can start closing. Yes, Kami, I have a comment that Ibrahima left us in the chat telling us that access to international markets for the gold ASGM is a very long and complex process that the refiners know that the requirements are very high, especially with regard to ASGM. So if you would like to maybe address this and expand on this point, please. Well, let's see here. Yes, absolutely. So we have to continue building those tools at the moment of seeing the realities of each country. It is complex, but not impossible. So according to the capacity building exercise and the projects that we all have, we're going to make this possible because leaders in the implementation of best practices, and we're going to make it possible to access responsible markets. So it's complex, tough, but it's a commitment on our side and that there are markets that are responding positively to these demands. Thank you, Ibrahima, for your comment. So, maybe Mona, you would like to make another comment to close, or thank you everybody for your participation. Go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much, Kami. That was excellent. All your time in preparing and your expertise. I really appreciate it and taking the time to comment and reflect on those comments that were shared in the chat. And thanks to all the participants and to ARM, of course, and to the interpreters. Everyone has links and access to all the documents. So I'll send around the recording soon. But thank you very much. Y'all have a good day. Thank you. Or evening.